All right, everyone, 1 minute past the hour. Let's get started. Thank you guys so much for joining today. My name is Zach Kathnelson. I'm the Director of Growth at Klipfolio. I run our sales team. I'm really excited to chat with you today and cover some cool content around how to build dashboards with data from your database. Some really quick housekeeping before we get started. We are recording the session today, and I'll be happy to share a recording with anyone who's interested after the fact. I've got some core content I wanted to cover. We're going to look at how to get data from a number of the different databases that we work with. And then once you have that data, how to bring it to life in tons of different visual formats and tell the best story or showcase the data in the best ways. So I do have some content that I was going to cover. However, I'd love to be as flexible as possible. So if there were any specific topics or questions that you came into today with, please share them at any time. Put them in the question and answer panel or the chat panel, and I will do my best to cover them. And if at any point you have questions on what we're covering or what we're looking at, I want to make the session as relevant as possible for you guys. So please let me know anytime, and I'll go a little faster or a little slower, and hopefully we'll make this as relevant as possible. So let's get into it. So here I have a trial account of Klipfolio, and we put this together for a conference we participated in a little while ago. This is a sample of a sales scoreboard. I've built a ton of these over the years, and we've got a number of these rotating in our section of the office. If you're starting a fresh trial of Klipfolio, and even whenever you're setting out to create a new dashboard on a topic that is of interest to you, or maybe you're trying to fulfill a request from a colleague on your team, the first thing you want to think of in Klipfolio is getting the data to power the dashboard that you have in mind. So that's where we're going to start today too. I'm going to go over to the data sources section. Now this is a trial account that I've worked in for a little while, so I have a lot of existing data sources. What we refer to as a data source is a unique set of data on any topic. It can be as small as a single cell that returns a relevant number to you, as large as a massive file, tens of thousands of rows and numbers of different columns, giving you the data you need. But regardless of the size or the type, getting that data into Klipfolio is the first thing you want to think of. So we are going to create a new data source. So here we see some of the larger services that our customer base is using. And behind all of these, we're trying to help the user get started by pre-writing a query to a certain API, or in the case of some relevant databases, we've got a sample database that you guys can work with and get some dummy data just to play with and explore. So before I hop specifically into some of the dedicated database connectors that we support, one thing I would want to mention is we work with a number of customers, and we have worked with a number of customers over the years who have the right data sitting in a database. However, for a variety of reasons, they'd prefer not to connect directly to that database. Maybe it's a production DB and they're worried about load. Maybe there are security concerns exposing it to a third party or to a cloud service. So there are options you can take outside of connecting directly to a database, although we do support connecting directly. Some of the workarounds might be if you have the ability to put an API on top of the database and expose that, we can query that API. Or what a number of organizations do, if they've got the right skill set to do it, is a simple job to push some relevant data from the database into an FTP or an SFTP, and that job can run daily or hourly or really as frequently as you need, and Klipfolio can then connect to that exported data instead of to the production database. However, I think we're going to spend most of our time today talking about how to get data directly from the database. So we have a few options. So we have what we call our database connector over on the right. And so if that's the option I choose, I have the ability to specify the location of the database, and I can actually write a specific query to return data right in this section here. Now, one of the really nice stories about working with data in a database is that it gives you a huge amount of power and flexibility in Klipfolio. Klipfolio is a very powerful tool, but we're not designed or intended to be an enterprise business intelligence tool. We're never going to excel at heavy, deep data exploration. We're never going to be a big data platform or really, interested in working with millions and millions of rows of data. That's not who we are. So if the data that you want to work with is in a database, you can really craft and customize the query to do that data exploration and to do the really strong manipulation of the data on the database side and bring in a smaller, cleaner data set into Klipfolio. The database is going to run that query and that calculation a lot faster than we will. So you can pare down the data size and the complexity. And the advantage on our side is that you have the flexibility to really bring in at granular detail only the data you want to work with, and then showcase it and bring it to life however you need in Klipfolio. Any questions at all coming to mind so far? Happy to dig into them. So let's take a step back. I mentioned what we see over here are some of the larger services that we see in our customer base. Over here are some of the, what I would call service agnostic ways of getting data in. So regardless of the type of database, you can choose this connector over here. However, if your data is in a Postgres database, we've got a dedicated connector for Postgres SQL to help you get that data in. MySQL as well. Microsoft SQL, a lot of the Amazon services you'll be able to find in this list here. So all of these are great and very accessible ways to get your database data into Klipfolio. What are some of the, please chime in with any questions or in the chat panel with some of the drivers that you're seeing in your environment or that your customers are leveraging, and I'd be happy to dig deeper into any specifics there. What I want to show you is a quick way for you to do some experimenting with a sample database with some sample tables that we've exposed. So if I search for MySQL, I'll find a dedicated connector there. So let's dig into that. And this is congruent with what we see when we look at a number of the other services whose logos you saw on that last screen. So I wanted to create a data source from a MySQL database. What I see here are a number of preformed queries that we've made available that will help you get some sample data to experiment with. So let's choose list of orders with details. So if we were creating our own custom data source from MySQL, all these fields would be blank. However, here we're specifying the host and the port. We've authenticated as a demo user. And here we see a pre-written query that our team has provided that's bringing in a specific set of data from this database. Not a huge volume of data, but this is just aimed to help you understand a little bit of the art of the possible. So here we're selecting a number of different fields from our customers table with a number of inner joins. Any operators or query parameters that you're running on your side, time permitting, there is a query timeout. However, anything that you're running on your side in the database in terms of the query, we can run on our side as well. We do have the ability to run stored procedures. However, very frequently, the query timeout will be an issue. So the query timeout is set at 80 seconds on our side. If that immediately raises alarm bells for you, we do have the ability to increase it on some of our larger subscription plans and some of our sort of private server solutions where we get you out of the public server cluster and into a more dedicated cluster for more enterprise requirements. So we're interjoining on a number of different details and we're ordering it by the date. We have the ability to include or exclude column headers and also have the ability to use SSL or TLS for added security, as well as an SSH tunnel if that helps alleviate some of the concerns of exposing beyond the firewall. So we are going to run this query and let's see what we get back here. So this is a preview of the data that gets returned. I see all the columns I requested. If I decide, for instance, that some of these are not relevant and not required, I can edit the query and execute it again. And let's see what we get back. We should drop a few columns. When you're creating a data source in Klipfolio, you really only want to bring in the data that is required for you to create a specific visualization. So for instance, I have an idea of how I would want to work with this data. I actually don't need to see the company or product code either. And you know, this is a small data source to begin with. It's, I think, only 60 rows and only a few columns. So the performance improvement that I'm going to see by improving those is minimal, if even non-existent. However, on a larger data set, if this was, for instance, 20 or 30,000 rows, then removing a few entire columns might have a measurable improvement on performance. So something to think about. Klipfolio does not limit you in any way on the number of different data sources you can work with and you can create in Klipfolio. And all of these, as I'll show you in a moment, can refresh over time. However, there is a limit on the maximum size of a single data source. Again, something we do have flexibility on some of our larger subscription plans, but for the majority of our user base, that limit is 10 megabytes per individual data source. Again, this one just a few rows and a few columns, so no risk at all of us hitting that limit. So I'm going to save this data source. I will continue. And understanding that I may have many data sources over time, I'm going to give this a good, clear name. And I'm also going to choose exactly how often we reach back out to the database to pull in the newest version of this data. This is a factor in our pricing, which I'll get to a little bit later, pricing and licensing. So if this is something that you know, is powering a report that gets sent to a few key users daily or weekly, I'm probably going to choose an infrequent refresh interval. If this is powering a wallboard on my warehouse floor or my sales floor, and I really need this data up to the minute, we can achieve that as well by a more frequent refresh rate. So I'm going to set it to every 24 hours for the purposes of our demo, and I'm going to save this. And we have now created a data source in Klipfolio that we can bring to life in a number of different ways. Any questions at all coming to mind on this topic? Let's go back to our MySQL connector. So I'm going to choose to create a new data source, and again, choose MySQL. So what I can also do, so let's go back and start with that same preformed query. I might decide that, you know, maybe I want to just understand a little bit about what data I have access to, or maybe I just want to bring in everything from a specific table. I'm just going to select star from this particular table. And here we get a little bit more granular raw data that we might choose to work with in a certain way. Also a very small data set. However, just some sample data that we can play with. And there are a few different preformed queries that will get us a few slightly different types of data that we can explore visualizing in different ways. So a list of employees, categories. So you can see a few of the different operators we're using in the query, and a lot of select, like, things like that. So again, any questions at all on this, I'm happy to dig deeper. But if not, I want to show you really quickly some sample information that I've put together and some really powerful functionality that you can use to customize the data, the output and the showcase of this data to our customers. So first, let's add a new dashboard here. Let's give this a good name. And let's bring the data that we've just brought in to life and see what we can do. So I've created a new dashboard. All the dashboards that I have access to are accessible in the side navigation. I'm going to add a visualization, and I'm going to build a new custom clip. This screen here is really where the magic happens in Klipfolio. There's a lot going on, but I'll walk you through a few key sections to it. So firstly, we have our list of component and chart types along the right. So let's start with a bar line chart. Whatever I want to create, and we support a large variety of the standard charts and graphs you would expect to see here. So I'm going to drag the bar line chart into the middle, and I now have the ability to choose the data set that I wanted to work with. There's a few ways to get to this screen, and I could have started from the data. However, even starting from building a bar chart, I'm going to add a data source. And here I see all the data sources that I have access to in our account. This is the one that we've just created, so let's grab that and see what we can do. So another really important part of this screen here is what you see up at the top left. We call this the component tree. I tend to refer to it often as a table of contents. It's a really useful way to navigate through the entire clip that we're creating and see all the different sections of it. And when I'm building a bar chart, I tend to start with the x-axis. So I've chosen that over on the left, and we see the x-axis now gets highlighted in blue to just show what area of the clip I'm working on. Let's grab all of our dates and put those across the x-axis. So I might not have to do a lot of cleanup if I choose date here, but one thing I can choose to do is change the format and the display of these. So every section of your clip, the x-axis, the series, and even the chart itself is going to have its own properties panel. And the properties panel are where we have huge flexibility over the visual elements of our chart. So firstly, we can do things like put these labels on an angle or maybe show them vertically. We can choose to just let the system decide on spacing, or we might say that we want to show every second label or don't drop the labels at all. But specifically what I want to do is we can see these labels are a bit long, is I want to change the date format. So we can see Klipfolio infers how this data is coming into the platform, and we can also decide exactly how we want to showcase it. So if month and day is the only thing that we're interested in, I might choose to show just 3-letter abbreviation for the month, day, and so on. And let's maybe put these back on an angle. It looks like all this data is from 2006, so maybe all I want is month and day. So a nice space-efficient way to showcase this data. Our data source was already sorting this correctly. However, in the event that it wasn't, I would have the ability to sort this oldest to newest. Or maybe we'll override that sort actually and put the newest data at the front. Probably not something I would do in real life, but very easy to achieve in terms of manipulating that. So our x-axis looks pretty good, although one thing I might want to clean up is, if you recall, I did choose to keep the column headers in the data source. So ordered data is taking up some space. Ordered date is taking up some space over here. So a simple way I can get rid of that is by setting up a filter. I'm going to choose a filter, and I'm just going to choose to exclude anything I want. I can also choose to craft some simple logic to show certain dates, maybe dates within the current week, current day, month, year, greater than a certain date, things like that. Although unfortunately this sample data is all from 2006, so I'll just go with this for now. And now that our x-axis looks a little bit cleaner, I want to bring the data to life on the series. So I'm going to navigate to the series up in our component tree, and let's choose to showcase the total unit price sold by day. And we can see just like that, our chart comes to life. Visually speaking, again, every element of the chart has its own properties panel. So that's where I'm going to go next, and I might choose to show the values on the chart. Now, we decided earlier, if we go back to our x-axis, that we wanted to show the data in terms of month and also day. But if we change our mind a little bit on this and we decide that we really only want to show the month, we can change that as well. Now I have all these repeating values for June, all these repeating values for May. Remember, I am still showing the data by day because those are all the unique records that I have access to. However, if I want to see a higher level summary, I can take this x-axis that is now just showing the months, and I can remove the duplicates. And by virtue of grouping the data on the x-axis, the data on the series is automatically aggregated. Numerical data will by default be summed. However, I can aggregate it in a slightly different way if I'm interested. Maybe I want to just count the rows actually. And text data will by default be counted, but I can also change it to aggregate in a slightly different way, counting the unique values. So here we've got a simple output showing the total number of orders by the month. The last thing I would probably do is give the series a good name so I don't see Untitled over in the legend or in the tooltip. So let's call this orders. Now we can see that looks a little bit better. And there we've got a very simple bar chart. What do we think on this? Any questions coming to mind? One good one here is, can we flip the chart on its side? Yeah, that's a great tactic. I often find myself doing that. So so the simple answer is yes, really easy to achieve. So just like the series and the x-axis have their own options, the top level of the chart has its own option as well. So all I need to do is flip the x and y axes. And now, it doesn't quite make sense with months, but let's change this up slightly. So maybe instead of months, we want to show our product names on the x-axis. So let's try that. And we might need to clean this up a little bit, but let's see what we can do here. So we're showing the product names. Let's undo that change really quickly and we'll clean this up and then we'll flip it over. So now we're showing all the product names on the x-axis instead of the dates. Let's get this back to a sum. What I would do in this case is, instead of the data being logically sorted by the date, I might choose to sort it by the most successful products. So now we've got those right at the front, being sorted highest to lowest. I see a real long tail in our numbers here. I might decide that I also want to create a filter over here, and I don't want to show all the data points. I only want to show the top 10, or even less. Maybe I would only show the top 5. So now our chart is quite a bit more clean. Now it might make more sense to flip it on its side. And if I still see that things are a little bit off, these angles are getting cut off and they're also on an angle. Always loads of different visual options and different ways to showcase this data until it really jumps out to the user and is showcased in the right way. This data is a little bit compacted, so I might choose to give the entire chart a little bit more size. And again, screen real estate, very, very important on a dashboard. So you really only want to give things as much space as they absolutely need. If I were saving this, let's just get rid of the title. And this was the most important chart that I was creating for my team. I might put it right at the top left on the dashboard because that's where people's eyes gravitate to immediately. So this really stands out and is front and center. Any other questions coming to mind on that previous screen we were working in? Yeah, another good question. So we did choose to build a bar chart here. So the question was, can we include other visuals in the same area? Yes, we can. So we chose initially that this was going to be a bar chart. However, all the other chart types that we have access to, we can bring them into our clip as well. And notice a few things as soon as I do that. So as soon as I added this gauge, the gauge then appeared over on the top left. A value pair is another chart type that's really useful for displaying two related values, maybe sales this week versus sales last week. And as soon as I add those elements, they too appear in the table of contents. I'm going to get rid of them quickly. So just by dragging in other component types, I can put one on top of the other. If, for example, though, I wanted to lay this chart out in a very specific way, the layout grid is a very useful type of chart. So if I pull that into our workspace, the layout grid basically gives me a number of independent workspaces that I can use however I need. So I've pulled the chart into one of the cells. this layout option lets me really customize exactly how much space each piece of the chart receives. So maybe I wanted to have a pie chart over on the left, right beside our table, and then eventually build a few labels right below it. Very easy to achieve. And in fact, a lot of users believe that they want to showcase their data in a pie chart. This data right here is often the exact type of data that they want to show in a pie chart. So really quickly, I'll show you what they look like side by side. A lot of data analysts out there and people with better design sense than myself really strongly believe that a pie chart has no business on a dashboard because it's not necessarily an efficient way to showcase data. Let's see what it looks like. So we've actually already done all the hard work. So over here in our chart, we've built our x-axis, which is going to be basically the labels on our pie chart. And we can actually borrow that work that we've done elsewhere. We see a few commands, a few shortcuts written in text below our formula bar. If I type the ampersand symbol, I can basically borrow the logic that I've created elsewhere inside this same clip. So the labels of the pie chart are going to be just like the x-axis, and the values of the pie chart are going to be just like our series. So if we see that, if we save that, here we have the exact same data on the left in the pie chart showcased that we do on the right in the bar chart. And let's save this and we'll put it back on a dashboard and we'll give it just as much space as it needs. And you guys be the judge of what the more efficient way to showcase data is. I would argue, and we've sort of advised a lot of customers over the years that whatever data you intended to show in a pie chart, showing it instead in a bar chart like this one that's flipped on its side is much faster for a user to interpret. Really tough for a user to see at a glance whether the blue category is that much larger than the green category. When in fact, on its side, much easier to see how much more coffee we're selling than curry sauce. So that was a good question. Yeah, you can have lots of different chart types in a single clip. What we've created here is one clip. You can have many chart types inside a single clip, and you can have many clips on a dashboard. I want to switch gears a little bit and show you some really powerful and flexible logic, really cool features that you can use. You can use with a lot of different types of data sources if your data sources support them, but you can almost always use them with a database. So I have I've built a few visualizations here that are very simple. Let's take a quick look. So this is just a gauge that's bringing in all the data on our product quantity. So I think I just brought in I did a select star on order details, and this is the data set that I got. So let's see, let's back up a little bit. So what I intended to show in these two clips was whatever information a user of my dashboard was interested in based on one of the fields in the data source. One of the fields in the data source is actually called order ID, and it's just returning a specific number. I called it customer number here. And I introduced a drop-down list on the dashboard as well. So a viewer of the dashboard has the ability to view all the data, or they can filter to view a very specific order number. So if we paint a picture of the right side of this dashboard is something that our team intends to use internally. So if our colleague Sally in accounting is interested in customer number 48, she can filter to that. And if John in finance is interested in customer 62, they can filter to that. If either John or Sally, or maybe our CEO, she's interested in a higher level view, we can filter to show all customers and the charts react. So essentially, we've given the user the ability to explore whatever data they need, and they've got access to everything. Now, in parallel to that, let's paint a slightly different story. This time around, we know what data we want to show, and it's the same data right here, the total order value, the average unit price, and the total quantity. However, this time we want to report out to these actual clients. We want to report out to client number 34, and we want to report out to client number 35. Obviously, each client should only see their own data, and we want a very simple, easy way to do that. We've got a really nice story to tell around how we can achieve this. And this is a very common use case with a lot of our marketing agency partners who want to report out to their customers on website performance or ad spend. They've got a beautiful template dashboard. So it's not quite beautiful, but let's imagine this is our template dashboard. And all of the customers we're working with, we want them to see exactly this, but everyone can only see their own data. So I'll show you how we've achieved that. There's a few different ways. Let's just refresh ourselves and take a look at this data set. So this column right here, column number A, is column letter A is the really important column that we need to think about. The numbers go up from about 27 up to 91. And we're pretending this is our customer ID. So in Klipfolio, and this trial account is set up with this functionality, we have the ability to allow a single account like this one to essentially provision new and logically separated accounts for external clients that they're working with. So this trial is set up with our partner functionality, and that's what we're seeing here. So this client administration section basically allows me to add a client, and what I'm doing is actually provisioning a brand new Klipfolio account. So let's call this client 50. I'm going to set it up in a free trial, so no billing is happening right away. If I'm ready to proceed, I will eventually be able to activate this account. I don't see that option here because I myself am in a trial as well. I can allow turn on or disable a number of key features that I may or may not want this organization to test with, and I'll also be able to provision any users in this account. So I'm going to save this new client, and now they appear in our client list. And I can actually log into this account and administer this account however I need. So right now, this account is a new client, completely empty. So what I want to do is actually set up what we're going to treat as essentially a variable inside this client. We call this a company property. So I've navigated to the account menu from inside the client, the company section, and then properties along the left. And company properties are basically attributes that are going to be, or have the ability to be set uniquely at the account level. So my own trial account has its own company properties, and all the clients have their own as well. These are a few default ones. So one is an ID, a unique identifier in our system, and another is the name. But I also have the ability to add a new company property. And I need to be smart about this because the logic depends on the very specific name. I'm going to call this property client number. And I'm going to set the value of this property for this new client that I'm creating. And I'm going to give it, just like the client name shows, I'm going to give it the value of 50. And I'm going to create this property. And what this does is it now allows me to use this variable in a few different ways. So let's go back up to our parent account. And let's take another look at our not so beautiful, but useful for demo purposes, perfect template dashboard that we want each of our clients to have. And let's see how this is built. So the first part of this clip, I've got a simple label. It's just saying the words client number. If you're curious, any part of a clip can have a prefix or suffix, so I just hard-coded that as the prefix. And then the actual number 30, all I'm doing is looking for the value of this variable, client number. Down over here in my primary value, I'm showing the quantity sold, and I'm showing the unit price. But I've set up filters, again, based on this first column, the ID, And the filter is basically saying, only show me the data where column A, again, matches this property, client number. So I've got this filter set up throughout this clip. So while the core elements are the same, I'm always looking for data from column D, column F, or column A. I'm always filtering by that very important property, client number. And what that basically allows me to do is, we created a new client a few moments ago. Let's hop back in there. We created client 50. We're going to sign in as an admin user, and we're going to import our template clip into this account. So I've navigated to the clip section. I'm going to import. I get to specify the source account that I'm importing from. Klipfolio SQL is my master account. These are some of the other clients. So I want to import from the master account. And the clip I want to bring in is dynamic order value. So I'm going to go to the next step. I'm told here that the clip that I'm about to import is dynamic order value. The data source is all order details. So remember, the data source has all of the data on all of our different clients. So I would never share this with the client users. My client users will probably need to be view only. But I'm going to import this clip now. And let's pop it on a dashboard. And without any real work or customization, you can see that the label is correct. It's showing data for client number 50. And if we look deeper in the data source, we'll see that this is the correct order value for client number 50. And this is the average unit price, $3. If we go back and check out some of our other clients, in client number 28, we sign in. They're going to see the exact same clip, minus a little bit of loading time, but that client label as well as the values are going to be based on whatever the variable is set to. So it looks like we've got a little loading time. Let's hop into our other clients and see if we get better luck over there. Client number 27. Here we go. Client number 27 with 100 order value and an average unit price of 14. So this, what we're leveraging here, the feature that we're leveraging here is called company properties. And our use case here is basically twofold. One, up in our parent account. So when I'm set up as a partner, I always see that link up at the top left, the ability to return to my main master account. The use case here is twofold. One, I want to allow internal users to look and dig into whichever or all clients that they're interested in. So there's an internal element to the use case. And here I'm using the filtering done in my drop-down list that exposed to all users. And the second part of the use case is a customer-facing story, where I want to show basically that exact same data to a variety of different organizations, all of whom need to see the same layout, but also all of whom need to see only their own data. And that part's really important. And I want to be able to achieve this very quickly. So let's try it one more time. We're going to add a new client. Let's go with client 60. We're going to sign in to client number 60 as an administrator. From the clips section, we're going to choose to import our master version of the clip called dynamic order value. And we're going to add this clip to a dashboard. Because everything, oops, and so here's another good story. And a slight fail in my live demo. This is showing all zeros because this clip relies on a company property that we have not yet created in this client. So we'll navigate to the account menu, the company section, and properties. And we're going to add that all-important company property with the value that we need for client number 60. And let's see if this auto updates, or I may have to remove it. Okay, perfect. So it picks it up right away. Now that we've got a company property, the Klip is able to pick it up and show the correct data. Another sort of slight variation of this functionality is a really, really cool one. Let's go, so I've gone back to our parent account. I'm gonna go to the data sources section, and let's find this data source that we created. So a fairly common story, I'm actually not even certain. Let's run this, remember what it looks like. Okay, let's pick a slightly different one. Not even sure I'm going to be able to show this live on the fly, but let's do our best. So I've just selected star from the order details table. Here's the data we get. So in this case, we're pulling in all the data from this particular table. And in the previous query, we had some logic, some inner joins, and some sorting, but it was pulling in a good chunk of raw data for us to work with. If we imagine a story where we didn't only have 60 rows of data, maybe we were getting 60 rows of data every minute, and our data set was very quickly becoming untenably large. We can do some really smart filtering at the data source level by leveraging a variable right here in this query. So let's see if we're able to execute this on the fly. So this is an existing data source today. So what I'm actually going to do is just borrow this query, pretty simple one. I probably didn't need to borrow it. And let's go and create a brand new data source. Any questions at all or comments as we're going through any of this, please let me know. So we're going to select all the data from order details, and let's try a little filter condition. So what I want to do is incorporate the specific variable into this query, and I'm really working on the fly, so it'll almost be a coincidence if I get the syntax correct here. However, I do have the ability to reference a variable. I need to use a specific syntax. So the word props for properties dot the variable name. So our variable name is client number. And I might need to specify a different ID, a different sort of specific field name for what I'm working on. Okay, and actually we got it. So here, instead of returning, if we remove this parameter and we run a select star, we get all of the data from the table. However, when we add that second line, the data source picks up the value of the variable in the specific account I'm in. So remember, I'm in the parent account right now. And I've set the property in my parent account with the ID of 30. But let's save this data set. And this specific feature and functionality is called dynamic data sources. So this data source will always be a select star on order details. However, it's also always only going to get the data where the ID equals whatever the variable is set to wherever I'm working. So let's save this data source as is. Let's call it dynamic order data. Let's set this to refresh fairly infrequently for our demo purposes. So we've saved this. Let's create a new really quick visual, and essentially let's just do a nice big gauge. So we'll do an arc gauge where the current value is, this time let's get our unit price, and let's just make it nice and large so it really stands out. Let's give the Klip a good name. And save it. So we have created this in our parent account. And let's go pop it onto our the same dashboard we were working in previously. Actually, I don't even want to put it on a dashboard. We've created the clip. Now we're going to go back to our client section, and any client that we are operating in, the important work has already been done. We've already set the value to be correct in all of our different clients. All we really need to do now is import that master asset down into our clients. So I'll go to the clips menu. I chose to import. I'm specifying that I'm importing from my master account. And here's our dynamic order value gauge. This time, using a different data set that is always only going to show the data that the customer should have access to. So here we go. In client number 60, that gauge value is 21. And if we were to repeat that behavior in client number 50, hopefully I'm not going too fast for our screen share to keep up. In client number 50, that gauge has just a value of 3. The last piece I would add around importing is we maintain a link between the master version of the asset and any imported versions. So if, for instance, I edited this master version and made, even a simple change, like if we all of a sudden decided that we don't want this label in blue, we want it instead in orange. Again, I have been accused of not having the greatest eye for design, so I apologize. Any change we can make here, actually, let's edit this again. Instead of just saving, I want to save the change and update the client instances. So here I see all of the instances of this asset that are existing in my client accounts. Here I see they've all been updated with confirmation. If I go check out those client assets, I should see that this text is now orange instead of blue. So a really nice story around how to dynamically show content to your clients, really leveraging the power of the database, dynamically fetching only the right data, customizing the query however we need to do the heavy lifting on the database side, which is going to be much more efficient, and then bringing that data to life in Klipfolio however we need. Any questions at all on these or other topics, please let me know. But in the last few minutes, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, I want to go a very little bit into Klipfolio's pricing and licensing. So I have enabled the partner functionality on this account. So the pricing that I'm going to see is not necessarily the same as what you would see in your trial account if you're working in a trial. Our typical pricing starts at $29 a month. Our partner pricing, where we have our client management functionality, starts at $49 per month. But there is a lower pricing tier if anyone is interested. Klipfolio's pricing and licensing is largely based on 3 different factors. One, the number of users in the account. So on the published plan at $49 a month, you're able to have access to 5 users. At the $99 and typically the $199 pricing tier, user limits go to unlimited. The second very important factor is the volume of content that you're creating. So it's largely based on the number of dashboards. A dashboard I tend to think of as a collection of visualizations that's designed for a very specific audience. So this is our template content that we thought internally was very relevant and would be relevant to our clients. This original example that we had up on the screen, very relevant to a sales team, not necessarily relevant to a marketing team, and probably not relevant to our executive team either. They might not be interested at all in the granular level detail of performance per team member. Instead, they might want a much more global view of performance. So dashboards are typically designed for a very specific audience. That's what we mean by dashboard. So that's the second important factor in our pricing. And the third that I would call out is the frequency of data sources refreshing. It can get as quick as every minute on some of our higher plans. And I apologize, guys. I probably shouldn't have shown the pricing in a partner account because there are some nuances to it. If anyone has questions on pricing or licensing, please let me know anytime. And beyond that, some feature-specific switches. So the ability to download reports and share by email, that's unlocked at the Publish plan tier. The ability to add your logo on a dashboard becomes available at the Grow plan tier. This tends to be our hero SKU at $99 a month, largely because of the speed of data refresh, but also the ability to have unlimited users. So just not be concerned to add or invite any other team members in to view or create content because users are unlimited. So pretty large value prop there. I also want to call out one of the many incredible things about Klipfolio has always been the level and pride we have in how we support our customers. So when you're working in a trial, or whether you're in a trial or a customer, or even if you're just exploring on our website, we have a live chat option available close to 20 hours a day, 5 days a week. We're based in Ottawa, Canada, and we're on from 9 to 5 Eastern time, and we have a colleague named Mike who's on in the evenings in Ottawa. We also have a remote team based in Pune, India, who are phenomenal. Almost the entire team has been with Klipfolio for 3 to 4 years, and they're awesome to work with. So overall, we're providing about 20 hours a day of live chat. So if you're working in a trial, whether it's a quick question, pricing question, a product question, you're trying to build your own data source query and you're not quite seeing the success you'd want, please take us up on the offer. Chat with us anytime on any topic. We'd love the opportunity to help out. Another great way to get some help is throughout the application, you'll see these little question mark icons, all of which open our sidebar, all searchable by keyword. So hopefully you're able to find some of the resources that will help you quickly. And if you're not seeing what you'd expect, you can always start a support ticket by email. When you chat with us, if it's a question that would take a little bit longer, we'll often take it offline and get back to you by email, but we would love the opportunity to help out. So please take us up on it. And world-class support is included in all plans for a faster response time and the ability to just go deeper on live chat. Priority support is available as an optional add-on, but support is included in all of our pricing plans. That was the bulk of the content that I was hoping to cover today. I will stay on the line for a few more minutes. If anyone had questions on any of the topics we covered today, I'm happy to help out and go a little bit deeper. But if not, thank you guys so much for taking the time to join today. Really appreciate it. I hope it was relevant and what you were expecting. And if you see merit in exploring further in a trial, I will reach out by email to everyone today, so you'll have my contact info. I'd love the opportunity to help out. Thank you guys so much again. And again, I'll stay on the line for a few, but if not, have a fantastic rest of the day. Bye for now.